The desert night was split by a gunshot that echoed across the barren land. Dust swirled under the pale moonlight as John Cassidy stood frozen, his revolver smoking in his hand. He had not meant to fire, yet the body of a man lay motionless near the abandoned saloon. John muttered, "Damnation. It wasn't supposed to start like this." The dry wind carried the sound of boots from the darkness, each step closer than the last. Shadows stretched long across the sand, and John's heart pounded like a war drum. He whispered, "Who's there?" But no answer came, only the hollow groan of the swinging saloon doors. A crow cawed from a fence post, its wings black against the silver sky. John's hand shook as he gripped the revolver tighter. The night was alive with menace, and the fire and dust of old grudges had just been reignited. The silence that followed was heavier than lead. John Cassidy stood rooted in place, staring at the corpse before him, his breath shallow. The dry air burned his throat as he muttered, "I didn't mean for this to happen." He looked over his shoulder, expecting the law to come thundering down on him. Instead, the night remained still, save for the whisper of the wind. Somewhere far off, a dog barked, breaking the illusion of calm. John pressed his lips tight and whispered to himself, "No turning back now." His boots scraped the dirt as he bent over the body, searching for answers. The man's eyes stared blank into the stars, carrying secrets John had not intended to silence. The night was only beginning, and he knew this was not the first sin he would be forced to bear. The corpse carried a badge tucked beneath his vest, half buried in sand. John pulled it free, and the sight chilled him. The man was no outlaw but a deputy, a servant of the law. John whispered, "God help me," his voice breaking. The town would never forgive this. He shoved the badge into his pocket, hands shaking as if it burned him. Lantern light flickered from the saloon window, casting long fingers of glow across the ground. John felt eyes upon him, unseen but piercing. He tightened his grip on the revolver and muttered, "They'll come for me." A horse whinnied in the distance, restless against the silence. The weight of guilt bore down on him, and he realized this death had just marked him for a darker fate. John rose to his feet, dust clinging to his coat, his shadows stretching tall behind him. He glanced at the saloon, its windows glowing faintly with life. The thought struck him like lightning. Someone had seen the shot. Someone knew. He muttered, "Damn eyes in the dark." His hand hovered near the revolver, though the smoke had long faded from its barrel. A faint laugh carried on the wind, mocking, cruel, and distant. John turned sharply, scanning the rooftops, the alleys, the fences, but saw only emptiness. His breath came fast, his chest tight, and he whispered, "It's starting again." The memories of betrayal, of blood spilled years ago, clawed at his mind. The night felt heavier, as if the desert itself had turned against him. The saloon doors creaked, breaking the suffocating silence. A young man stepped into the doorway, eyes wide with fear yet lit by curiosity. It was Samuel Reed, no older than 20, lean with restless energy. John muttered, "Go back inside, boy." Samuel shook his head and whispered, "I saw it all, John." The words cut sharper than a knife. John's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the revolver. Samuel stepped forward, his boots hesitant against the boards. "You didn't mean it," Samuel said, though doubt wavered in his tone. John turned his eyes away, shame etched deep in his face. The night had found its witness, and his sins had found their voice. There was no undoing the shot that had started it all. The dawn came with fire in the sky, streaks of red and orange washing over the desert. John Cassidy sat on the porch of the saloon, head in his hands. Samuel Reed stood beside him, restless and uncertain. John muttered, "I didn't want it, boy, but the world wanted blood." Samuel swallowed hard and said, "You can't outrun this, John." John lifted his eyes, shadows etched in the lines of his face, and whispered, "I've outrun worse, but this one feels like a chain around my neck." The wind carried the smell of dust and wood smoke from the town's hearths. John thought of the past, of betrayals carved deep into his heart, and the ache of promises broken. He knew redemption was a far road, and he was already walking barefoot upon its thorns. The creak of wood signaled another presence. From the edge of the street, Henry McGraw, the old mentor, emerged with slow steps. His limp carried the story of forgotten wars and bullets still lodged in his bones. John straightened, respect drawing him upright. "Henry," he said, voice heavy with memory. Henry McGraw, gray-bearded and sharp-eyed at 60, nodded once. "Blood spilled in the dust again, John. You've started storms that don't end easy." Samuel stepped forward, eager yet uncertain. "Maybe we can set it right," he said quickly. Henry's eyes lingered on him with both pity and pride. "The world doesn't bend for hope, boy. It breaks it." His words fell heavy, yet his presence carried a strength that steadied the air. Inside the saloon, shadows played against the wooden walls. John leaned across the bar, staring into the dregs of a whiskey glass. Henry sat opposite him, back straight despite his limp, his voice steady. "You want redemption, John, but redemption doesn't come cheap." John's jaw clenched, the weight of his choices heavy. Samuel sat near, eyes burning with youth and fire. "He can make it right," Samuel insisted, his words rushing forward like a colt. John shook his head and muttered, "Right doesn't come from killing men who wear badges." Silence filled the room, broken only by the clink of glass. Outside, the desert sun blazed through the shutters, painting the floorboards in strips of gold. The truth pressed in, suffocating them all. The saloon door swung open, and silence broke as Clara Hayes stepped inside. Her beauty carried weight, every glance sharp as a blade. At 35, she wore a crimson dress that glimmered faintly against the dust, her eyes deep with secrets. John stiffened at the sight of her, bitterness laced with desire crossing his face. Clara said softly, "Always trouble where you walk, John." Henry's gaze sharpened, wary. Samuel leaned forward, drawn by her presence. John spat back, "What side are you playing this time, Clara?" She smiled faintly, though it carried sorrow. "I play only to survive." Her words hung like smoke in the dim room. John's heart pounded, remembering the betrayals she carried on her lips. The tension in the room thickened like storm clouds before rain. John stood tall, eyes fixed on Clara. "Last time you left me for dead," he said, voice low and dangerous. Clara's smile faltered, but her tone was calm. "And you lived, didn't you?" Henry rose slowly, placing his hand on John's shoulder. "The past's a fire, son. Touch it and it burns." Samuel spoke quickly, eager to prove himself. "We need allies, not enemies." Clara's eyes softened briefly, revealing a wound hidden beneath her defiance. "Enemies and allies look the same in the dark," she whispered. The saloon seemed to breathe with them, wood groaning, lanterns swaying. The story between them was far from over, and the dust had only just begun to rise. The sun stood high over the desert, shadows shrinking beneath boots. John Cassidy walked with Henry McGraw and Samuel Reed along the dusty street, Clara Hayes trailing with silent poise. Whispers followed them from behind shutters, the town already passing judgment. John muttered, "They know, and they'll string me up soon enough." Henry's voice cut through like gravel. "A man doesn't run from truth, John. He walks into it head high." Samuel clenched his fists, eyes burning with reckless fire. "Then we fight," he said. Clara smirked faintly, her eyes unreadable. "Or you die trying," she whispered, her words like silk over steel. The desert heat pressed down on them, heavy as the burden of guilt riding John's shoulders. From the sheriff's office a figure emerged, Sheriff Elias Crow, tall, broad and cold-eyed at 55. His badge gleamed in the sunlight, authority carved into every step. John's gut twisted at the sight. Crow had once been a man of law, now whispered to be its greatest betrayer. Crow's voice carried sharp across the street. "Cassidy, you've killed my deputy. You'll pay, same as any outlaw." John's voice rasped like sand in wind. "It was a mistake, Crow." The sheriff's lip curled into a grin. Mistakes are just sins waiting for a noose. The townsfolk edged closer, their silence a verdict. Clara whispered near John, "He's not after justice, he's after you." The silence cracked when Samuel stepped forward, fire in his young eyes. "You call it law, but it's just power you're clinging to," he shouted. Crow's eyes narrowed, the grin fading. "Watch yourself, boy. You'll swing beside him if you're not careful." John hissed, "Samuel, stand down," but the youth's blood was too hot. Henry's hand clamped Samuel's shoulder, voice heavy. "This ain't your fight to start." The street tensed like a drawn bowstring, every eye locked on the standoff. Clara's gaze flicked between them all, her lips pressed tight, hiding the weight of truth she carried. The desert heat shimmered, sweat dripping down faces as destiny pressed closer. Crow raised his hand, and two deputies emerged from the shadows, rifles gleaming. John's stomach sank. Clara whispered, "He was waiting for this." John muttered back, "He always is." The deputies leveled their weapons, their eyes blank as stone. Crow's voice boomed, "Surrender now, or I'll bury all of you here." Henry's lips curled with grim defiance. "You've forgotten, Elias, I taught you to shoot." Crow's grin returned, sharp as a blade. "And I surpassed you long ago?" Samuel's breath quickened, fear warring with fury. John stood tall, revolver at his side, and said, "If this ends here, then it ends in fire." The townsfolk gasped, the weight of battle in the air. The standoff stretched, every heartbeat an eternity. John's hand hovered above his revolver, eyes locked with Crow's. Clara stepped forward suddenly, her voice sharp. "Enough!" she cried. All eyes turned to her as she raised her chin. "You want truth?" John isn't the only one with blood on his hands. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Crow's eyes darkened, his mask cracking for an instant. John's breath caught, suspicion flaring. Clara's gaze met his, heavy with secrets yet to be told. Samuel whispered, "What does she mean?" Henry's face tightened, eyes narrowing at Crow. The desert wind howled, sweeping dust across boots and rifles, as the first fracture of hidden truth broke open. The crowd murmured like restless thunder, as Clara Hayes stood firm in the street. Her voice carried over the dust. Crow hides more than justice. He hides the truth of his own crimes. Sheriff Crow's jaw tightened, but his grin remained sharp. John Cassidy felt the words stabbed deeper than bullets. Clara's eyes met his, full of pain and defiance. "The deputy you shot was no innocent. He was Crow's blade in the dark, killing on command." Gasps rippled through the townsfolk, their faith cracking like glass. Henry McGraw muttered, "I always knew he'd rot the badge from the inside." Samuel whispered, "She's risking her neck saying this." John's breath came heavy, torn between anger and a glimmer of reluctant trust. Crow's laughter echoed like steel scraping stone. "Lies," he declared, raising his hand to silence the crowd. "She's a snake, always has been." Clara's chin lifted higher. "You fear truth because it cuts deeper than your gun." John's fists clenched, his heart torn. "Why now, Clara?" he asked, his voice raw. She hesitated, eyes shadowed with regret. "Because the fire you lit burns us all, John. And I can't carry his sins anymore." Henry's eyes narrowed, studying her. Samuel stepped closer, voice trembling. "Whose sins?" Clara's gaze shifted to Crow, unyielding. The air grew heavy, the town caught between justice and fear, every breath thick with expectation. The hush broke when Clara's words fell like a hammer. "Crow killed your brother, John." The street gasped, and John's knees nearly buckled. His voice cracked. "You lie." Clara's eyes brimmed with tears, yet held steady. "I was there. I saw him pull the trigger in the canyon. He swore me to silence, or I'd hang with the rest." John's world spun, rage clawing at his chest. Henry's jaw clenched as he muttered, "Truth bleeds late, but it bleeds deep." Samuel's eyes widened, his voice hoarse. "This changes everything." Crow's hand drifted toward his revolver, his grin gone, his mask slipping to reveal the beast beneath. The desert seemed to hold its breath. Crow's voice boomed, cutting through the murmurs. She spins lies to turn you against me. She's no saint, Cassidy. She was mine once, and shall betray you again. Clara flinched, shame flickering across her face. John's voice roared like thunder. Did you? Her silence lingered, heavy as stone. Finally, her whisper slipped out. Yes, once, but not now. Henry's voice carried steady. Past sins don't cleanse present truth. Samuel's face twisted, betrayal and hope clashing. Crow sneered. You trust a woman who's played both sides? She'll lead you to the gallows. Dust swirled in the wind, the street alive with tension, every soul waiting for the next spark. The street cracked under the weight of truth. John's hand hovered above his revolver, eyes blazing with rage and betrayal. Clara's voice broke. I carried it too long, John. Forgive me or damn me, but it's yours to know. Crow barked. Don't listen. She's poison. Henry stepped forward, his cane digging into the dust. Elias, your lies end here. Samuel cried out. This town deserves truth. The crowd pressed closer, their whispers like a storm. John's voice thundered. You killed my brother. Crow's eyes narrowed, hand now firm on his weapon. And I'll bury you too. The sun blazed overhead, unforgiving, as the final lines were drawn in the dust. The desert wind rose, sweeping dust across the faces of the gathered townsfolk. John Cassidy's breath came slow, rage and sorrow twisting within him. Sheriff Crow stood like a wall of iron, his hand resting on the revolver that had ended bloodlines. Clara Hayes stepped back, the weight of her confession hanging heavy. Henry McGraw placed his hand on John's shoulder, steady as stone. Hold, son. Reckoning's close, but don't let fury blind you. Samuel Reed shifted restlessly, fists trembling, his voice low. He'll never stop unless we stop him. John's eyes locked on Crow, his voice a growl. This town's been under your shadow long enough. Today the sun burns it away. The street hushed, all waiting for the fire to strike. Crow's deputies raised their rifles, the metal glinting beneath the blazing sun. John's hand flexed over his revolver, the leather holster creaking. Samuel muttered, We're outgunned. Henry's voice cut sharp. A man's not measured by bullets, but by what he stands for. Clara whispered, And what if he falls for it? John's jaw tightened. Then I fall with truth at my back, not shame. Crow sneered, his voice loud enough for all. You think these people will side with a killer? You've got dust and ghosts for allies. The crowd stirred, fear and doubt in their eyes. John raised his chin, his voice steady. Better ghosts than the rot you wear as law. The street vibrated with the weight of coming war. The air cracked with the sound of a church bell, tolling slow from the hilltop. It rang like judgment, the town frozen under its echo. John's eyes never left Crow, yet memories surged, his brother's laughter, the betrayal that stole it away. Samuel stepped forward, bold and reckless. You can't scare us anymore, he shouted. Crow's deputies steadied rifles, but Henry's cane slammed against the ground, his voice firm. This ends with truth, not tyranny. Clara's eyes darted across the crowd, searching for a flicker of hope. John muttered low, One shot starts it, and none of us walk away clean. The bell's last note faded, leaving only silence heavy as the grave. Crow's voice thundered, Enough talk. Cassidy dies here. His hand twitched near his revolver. John's muscles coiled, ready to draw. Samuel gritted his teeth, whispering, Now or never. Clara reached for John's arm, her voice breaking. Don't, not yet. Henry's eyes narrowed, his tone like iron. Steady, John. Patience wins fights that rage cannot. Crow barked orders, his deputies moving to flank. Dust spiraled in the rising wind, the sun sinking lower, throwing long shadows like bars across the street. John's voice growled low. You'll answer for every grave you fill. The silence after his words cut sharper than steel, every soul in town caught on the knife's edge of war. The crowd split as thunder cracked in the distance, storm clouds rolling over the horizon. Lightning split the sky, the air thick with doom. John's hand hovered, sweat dripping from his brow. Crow sneered, his voice low and venomous. "I took your brother, Cassidy, and I'll take you next." The words ignited fire in John's soul. Samuel gasped, fury blazing. "He admits it." Clara's breath caught, her tears glistening in the dimming light. Henry's grip on his cane tightened, his voice steady. "Then it's done. The storm's come." The first drops of rain splattered the dust, hissing like boiling water. John's voice roared, "This ends tonight." The town held its breath as the storm and showdown collided. The storm broke as thunder roared across the desert, rain spilling down like judgment. John Cassidy faced Sheriff Crow in the street, mud and dust swirling beneath their boots. Samuel Reed stood behind him, trembling but ready, his voice sharp. "We end it now." Crow smirked, revolver twitching in his hand. "You've always been chasing ghosts, Cassidy. Time to join them." John's heart pounded, his brother's face flashing in memory, blood pooling in a canyon. Clara Hayes cried out, "Don't let rage blind you, John." Henry McGraw's steady voice cut through the storm. "I had to wait until. Focus, make it count." The lightning flashed bright, and in that breathless silence, John's hand moved. The guns roared, bullets tearing through the rain. John's revolver cracked like thunder, Crow's shot answering. Mud splashed as they dove, steel flashing in the downpour. Samuel shouted, "John!" as he ducked behind a trough. Clara stumbled back, clutching her chest, breath sharp with fear. Henry lifted his cane and fired the hidden pistol within, the shot grazing one deputy. Crow's laugh echoed through the storm. "Is that all you've got?" John's eyes burned as he reloaded fast, rain dripping into his eyes. He muttered low, "For my brother." The storm howled, carrying the stench of gunpowder through the night. Smoke curled through the rain as chaos tore the street apart. John ducked behind a wagon, bullets shredding wood to splinters. Samuel rushed forward, reckless, firing his revolver at Crow's men. Henry's voice roared, "Stay down, boy." Clara crouched in the mud, eyes darting between John and Crow, torn by fear and guilt. Crow advanced, boots pounding, his voice venom. "Your brother begged, Cassidy. He begged before I sent him to hell." John's chest burned, fury exploding through his veins. He shouted back, "Then you'll choke on his name." He burst from cover, revolver blazing through the storm. The storm's fury mirrored the fight as John and Crow clashed in the open, their revolvers blazing in quick succession. Bullets sparked off stone, mud splashing under their boots. Samuel wrestled one deputy to the ground, young strength fueled by rage. Henry grunted as a bullet grazed his arm, yet he fired back steady, unyielding. Clara screamed as a stray round shattered glass near her head, cutting her cheek. Crow's grin twisted with madness, his voice echoing. "You can't kill me, Cassidy. I am this town." John's voice thundered back. "Then the town dies with you." Their guns smoked, each step closer to the final reckoning. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the moment of fate. John and Crow faced each other in the downpour, soaked and broken but unyielding. Crow's revolver clicked empty, and for the first time, fear cracked his face. John's hand steadied, his voice raw. "This is for him." He fired, the shot tearing through Crow's chest, the sheriff staggering back, eyes wide with shock. The deputies faltered, dropping rifles as the lawless mask crumbled. Crow fell into the mud, blood mixing with rain. Silence crashed over the town, broken only by thunder's roar. John lowered his revolver, his chest heaving, knowing victory carried a price heavier than chains. The storm eased, leaving the street soaked in blood and rain. Sheriff Crow's body lay still in the mud, the final weight of his tyranny broken. John Cassidy stood silent, his revolver lowered, the smoke fading into the wet air. Samuel Reed stepped forward, wide-eyed, his voice trembling. "It's done." Clara Hayes clutched her cut cheek, her crimson dress darkened by rain, whispering, "But it's never truly over." Henry McGraw steadied himself with his cane, his wounded arm bleeding, his voice gravel. "Victory costs, John, and you'll carry it long after we're gone." John's gaze fell on Crow's badge gleaming in the mud, and his heart felt heavier than before. The townsfolk emerged slowly from their hiding places, their eyes wide with awe and fear. Some whispered prayers, others crossed themselves, as though they had witnessed a curse broken. John felt their stares pierce him, not as a savior but as a man who had brought death to their doorstep. Clara's voice was soft, carrying sorrow. "They'll never forget what you've done, John." Samuel stepped forward, his tone fierce. "They'll remember you freed them." Henry sighed, his voice a warning. "Freedom and blood are twin shadows, boy. They walk together." John turned his back to the murmurs, rain dripping from his hat, the weight of redemption bitter on his tongue. Inside the saloon, lanterns flickered, casting golden light against damp wood. John sat heavy at a table, revolver resting beside his drink. Clara stood near the window, her dress torn, her eyes carrying regret deeper than words. Samuel paced like a restless colt, his voice sharp. "We can rebuild now. We can start fresh." Henry lowered himself carefully into a chair, wincing from his wound. "Fresh starts are lies, boy. Scars don't vanish. They remind." John lifted his glass but paused before drinking. "Maybe unto a vein. Niban battered windy." His voice was low, burdened. "Every man I kill feels like another stone tied to my neck. Redemption? It feels further now than ever." Silence lingered, heavy as the storm outside had been. The storm clouds broke apart, moonlight spilling silver across the battered town. John stepped outside, boots sinking in the mud, his gaze on the open desert. Clara followed, her voice soft, fragile. "Will you leave us again, John?" He paused, the silence stretching like a wound. Samuel stood at the doorway, hope in his young eyes. "Stay. Help us rebuild." Henry leaned against the frame, his voice steady despite the pain. "A man must choose where his soul finds peace, John. Yours may not be here." John whispered. Peace died with him, his eyes on the horizon where his brother's memory still lived. John's boots echoed down the silent street as he walked alone into the night. Clara watched, her lips trembling but no words leaving. Samuel's voice cracked. "He'll come back," though doubt clouded his eyes. Henry closed his own, whispering like prayer. "Some men don't come back. They carry their ghosts too far." John's silhouette faded into the desert, framed by the rising moon. He whispered to himself, "Through fire and dust, I walk alone." The town behind him breathed again, freed but scarred, while the road ahead stretched endless. His figure grew smaller against the horizon, a lone rider without a horse, swallowed by the night's embrace.